There's no secret sauce, it's just a lot of work.
Hi-de-ho, and welcome back to the Wild Business Growth Podcast, presented by Hippo Direct. This is your place to hear from a new entrepreneur or creative innovator every single week who's unleashing creativity to grow bigger and better businesses. I'm your host, Max Brandstetter, digital marketing dude here at Hippo Direct. Shoot me a note at max@hippodirect.com if you'd like any help with podcasting or digital marketing. This is episode number 26, and today's guest is Scott Gelber. He's a former college football player turned digital strategy expert who has excelled at the agency Merkley+Partners. He started as a media planner, moved up all the way to chief digital officer, and most recently has been named the company's first ever president. Huge thanks to Scott for hosting at the incredible Merkley office in New York City. And huge thanks to our buddy Brendan O'Mara, our guest on episode number 2, for getting the ball rolling on this interview in the first place. It's a wild ride as always, so buckle up and enjoy the show. Alrighty, we are here with Scott Gelber, president of Merkley+Partners here in sunny NYC, and I believe professionally you go by Scotty Too Hottie, correct?
I did not, that was not planned for that, you got me, but yeah, only my closest friends call me that.
Well, speaking of closest friends, huge shout out to Brendan O'Mara, our guest on Wild Business Growth Podcast, episode number 2, for hooking us up. The connection here, I know you guys are really good friends and still clients, so that's, I guess client to agent, whatever the term is for that.
And he was 2, and what number am I?
You are 26, so you guys are both in the first 26 episodes.
Yeah, I'm not buying that. That does not sound like we're even in the same playing field, so thanks for that.
Yeah, no problem. Cool, I'll leave now. But Scott, for anybody that isn't familiar with you yet, can you give a brief overview of sort of where you came from, how you got into the marketing and agency space, and what you're up to now as Mr. President?
Yeah, I mean, now I basically just play golf and count my paychecks. Now, I've been in advertising my entire career, agency side. Not that many shops, to be honest with you, which is a little bit uncommon for folks in advertising. So I was at a few small agencies on Long Island. Started and actually wanted to go into this field out of college. And with a few bounce arounds, I've actually been at Merkley for 16 years.
Wow.
Which is not common in the industry. The usual turnover at pretty high levels is every couple of years. So we got a lot of tenure and seniority at this place, which is a kind of cool differentiator. But, my background is pretty much digital and tech, and they moved me into a managerial position, which is cool. But that's still my focus. I think, the ad industry, if it's going to survive the way it has for the last 40, 50 years, it's got to get on the tech wave. So that's kind of my focus here.
Wow, and 16 years is impressive. I was born 16 years ago, so you hit it on the head there.
Yeah, now I want to smack you.
So you're president now, and you've been, probably feels like forever that you've been at Merkley. How did you get into this digital space in the first place and realize that you wanted to focus on this sort of digital strategy and marketing?
Yeah, I got to tell you, it was completely by happenstance. So, maybe about 12 or 15 years ago, when everyone was trying to figure out how to roll digital, or there wasn't even social back then, into the mix. They were basically just looking at the younger portions of the agencies, the younger demographics, and leaning on them. And there was a lot of people at that time where they had to decide, were they going to kind of sit back and say, this isn't my wheelhouse, or are they just going to lean in and say, you know what, we're going to figure this thing out? And I was lucky enough to be on a number of accounts with a lot of clients that said, you know what, let's test the waters. We know this is going to be, there's going to be a lot of, fast fails. We know there's going to be a lot of bumps. But it just kind of was able to get the right mix of clients that were able to take the right amount of risk and build up my skill set that way. I think, the funny thing is, now you're in a position where people look to folks in an agency, or client looks to agencies and they go, digital experts, but no one thinks like, how did they become digital experts?
Right. Well, I think that.
Yeah. Well, well, it's literally dudes, it's guys and gals who decided they were going to figure this shit out.
Yeah.
They were just going to take it upon themselves. There's no one came down from the mountaintop with the 10 commandments of digital.
The digital mountaintop.
You just had to figure it out. And the people that realized they got to do that 10 to 12 years ago are the folks now that everyone looks to lead digital strategy. So there's no secret sauce. It's just a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, how'd you find that courage to go all in on this space that was sort of had a lot of question marks, still has a lot of question marks, but I think it's come a long way over the past decade?
A big mortgage payment and 2 kids that need cash. But honestly, it's like you got to make a decision. If you want to be in advertising and marketing for the long haul, you got to realize that this is going to be, the next 30, 40, 50 years are going to be based in this space. So, you could try to fake it. You could try to just buck the trend and say, listen, I'm going to do newspaper print planning, but that's, things like that are a dying medium. So if you want to be in the space, you got to take it seriously.
Absolutely. And you've progressed. What was your first title here at Merkley?
Media planner.
Media planner.
So, you're talking about a pretty low level spot where you're,
planning media.
There you go. we spent a lot of time on that title. But, it's, you're planning print and basic digital and out of home and TV and that kind of stuff, and just evolved over time and climbed the ranks. And previous to this, I was a chief digital officer, and I think it's a testament to the fact the agency believes in digital, that they moved me into the spot. So even though I now oversee a big portion of the agency, I'm still focused on bringing digital to the forefront of everything we're doing.
That's really cool. It's clearly a passion area of you. You mentioned sort of going up through the ranks there. What can you point to that's really helped you ascend from media planner, from the ultimate media planner to president?
I think it's going to sound a little lofty maybe, but if always
we like lofty.
Yeah, I don't know. I was going to say, if my wife or kids hear this, they're going to call me out on this. But I think it's staying humble. No matter how, what your title is, no matter how many people are on your team, never thinking you figured it out, never thinking that you're too good for a job or an assignment or a piece of business, and just working your tail off. If you never really look around to worry about what other people are doing, what you've achieved, and you just figure out what's the next step, you never really worry about it. You're never content. So, I think, again, even now, there's 1,000 things, even before we recorded this, that I did wrong already today. And I've got
1,000. That's a lot. Do you wake up at 12:01 a.m.?
And I try to screw up one thing a minute. I'm making a good pace today. So, but again, just work your ass off and never be content with where you were yesterday, or say, I've made it. And I think, the people who just have that humble perspective, I've learned that from other folks. This is nothing that was ingrained in me. I've seen how people who came before me have made it. And it's just because they were the most unassuming folks. You never would have known what their title was unless you saw it on a card. They just worked their butts off. And
what's the biggest thing that you've seen change, we'll say, in the agency space since you've progressed over the years?
And not for the better, to be totally honest with you.
Yeah.
So this may not be the best answer. But I think when I got into advertising, call it around 20 years ago, everything was centered around, the big idea, the emotional hook, how to create a connection between, consumer and brand. And I think, with the growth of digital, which I'm fully behind, so much of what goes on now is data and tech. And many times we're more enamored by the platform and the ways to get to the consumer than we are actually with the idea once we get to them. So there's this weird pendulum where the technology is starting to lead the advertising and the ideas are sometimes becoming secondary to that. And that's something that is a real fine line to walk, and a tension that we have all the time with clients. Whereas, come to them with the most advanced technology and the coolest media plan and all this innovative shiny objects, and we're like, cool, what are we communicating? Like, what's the hook? What are we saying? And everyone's like, oh damn, we forgot that part. So
we'll just do an Instagram.
There you go. We'll just, we need to be on Snapchat. Okay, what's the objective of it?
Right.
To be on Snapchat. You're like, but why? So we're there. And you just have and I get it.
And then gone.
I totally get it. But I still think that the cool part about advertising is that blend of art and science. And we've gotten a little bit too much science, and we've got to thread the needle again. So that's what I see as one of the changes. To be honest with you, they're not for the better.
Right.
That we've got to walk back a little bit towards.
So how do you go about reinforcing that it all starts with the idea and it's more about the plan behind everything, not the shiny objects, as you said?
Yeah, to be honest with you, it's a stubbornness with our clients in a good way. And I mean our stubbornness. The thing at this agency that I do think makes us unique is we have what's called a strategic planning discipline, where it's all about consumer insights and looking at what the current emotional state is with consumers and where we want to take them. And sometimes when we have clients or projects or pitches where you just want to, the tendency is to jump to like the execution. We won't allow that to happen. We'll actually sometimes tick people off because we're too, we stay very disciplined in our approach, that we're not just going to go and, build a media plan that doesn't have an idea behind it.
Right.
So making sure that we have the stewards behind every plan is the way that we get it done. Mm-hmm. And sometimes that makes us, and I say this all the time, we may not come to you with the sexiest idea every time, but we're going to come to you with the idea that we think is going to work because it's based on an insight. And if clients that want that, we think we're the right for, folks that just want the shiny object, we actually aren't the right fit for, because to be honest with you, that's not necessarily the way we think we're going to help move business.
Hey, I'm all for the right ideas, whether it be sexy, unsexy.
I mean, it's hard for any idea I bring not to be sexy, but
right, there's that humble trait of yours coming out.
Damn, those two things didn't sync up.
Yeah, we'll edit that one out. But now as your role as president, what would you say is your biggest goal, or kind of the biggest thing you're trying to do when you look at the vision of this agency over the next few years?
Wow, if I could just distill it down to one, my job would be a lot easier. I think, and this is a little bit specific to Merkley.
Yeah, that's cool.
I think that one of the things that we are really, it's going to come off really odd. One of the things we have not been great at, and again, I've been here for 16 years, so we are really bad at self-promotion. Really bad. We are. Really,
I don't have that problem.
Yeah, that was a layup I just handed you right there. We were really focused on client service. We're really focused on, getting the right work done and, obsessed with, clients' metrics. But we're not a big kind of like internal PR type shop. And one of the things that, there's that fine line between, confidence and cockiness and being, sensitive to that humble statement I made, which you called me out on. Advertising is one of those things where you've got to get your name out there. And I think what I want to do over the course of the next, 6, 9, 12 months is make sure that the great work and the thinking and what makes us different are things that are known in the marketplace. I don't want clients to stumble upon us. I want them to realize that, as crazy as the marketplace is with the proliferation of digital and all these different channels, the thing that really makes advertising still work is that discipline and the people that really, really want to key in on insights before they get to tech. And that's what we do. But because we're so focused on it for our clients, we don't have that narrative to the marketplace. So a big part of my task to myself is to make sure that as much as we stay humble, we're not shy about, making sure that our story to the marketplace is well known.
Right. That's very interesting because you guys do have a lot of very cool campaigns. I think getting on this podcast is a great way to start with the PR standpoint. I thank you for paying me $6 million and asking me to come over.
Well, I assume that between your listener base is probably reaching 200-300 million people.
That's putting it lightly.
Putting it lightly, so yes, in 10 different countries. So
actually, we are on every continent except for Antarctica. So we need some help with our Antarctican listeners. But actually, we are all over the world, so that part's pretty cool.
All right,
but
you called me out on that one too.
I'm just here for the call-outs.
Sweet.
You're going to kick me out here any minute. When you think about the different campaigns that you've worked on over the years here, I know you've got a lot of really cool clients. Are there any come to mind as your favorite or most rewarding experience?
Yeah, so Mercedes-Benz is the client that we're most well known for. They've been here for 20-something years, so that's kind of an easy one to go. But to me, the assignments or the pieces of business that I worked on that really had that unique insight that may not be household names are the ones that they're much cooler in my mind. And the one that comes to mind will probably be one that you and listeners don't even know of, but it was a smoking cessation gum called Zonic. It was an unbelievable insight that we had that led to a campaign that was really, really interesting. And to distill down what was months and months of research, One of the things about people who are trying to quit smoking is the way that the category, like the Nicorettes and the Nicoderms had always spoken to them, is it's a pass or fail type of equation. So you chew this gum, you try to quit in 12 weeks. If you do, you won. If you don't, you suck and you failed. And it was a very kind of like black or white discussion. And we said, you know what, we need to have a different point of view for smokers on quitting. And we recognize that, you know, for them, it's not an all or nothing game. So if you have one decision at one time to pick up a piece of gum and not smoke a cigarette, that's a little win. You know, if you stumble, you know, the next 2 days and have to smoke, but get back on kind of the horse 2 days later, that's a little win right there. So we had this narrative with smokers that was all about kind of it's the little victories and the little moments, not the big picture necessarily, which was, you know, different for everyone. So, you know, and putting that communication to smokers resonated with them. We had a massive, massive amount of success because they said, you know what, this brand really friggin' gets what it's like to try to quit smoking.
Yeah.
It's not that like black or white thing that the category has told us about for 40 or 50 years. And that goes back to what I was talking about earlier with that insight, you know, trying to find that little nugget that no one has tapped in and just really keying in on. All of a sudden, everything you do has that point on it that your competitors have missed. So I always go back to that example because I just think it's a perfect example of how you find that thing, it really resonates, and then almost the marketing becomes easy because it's all laddering back to that point of view that no one else has taken.
Yeah, it's a really neat insight, and that one had to be extra rewarding because it's a really good cause in itself.
Yep. And again, it's one of those things too. You know, we had half the dollars that our competitors had, so we had to have every dollar working harder. But when it's based in something that's such a truism, it's going to carry more heft than when you're just using category generic terms.
I'm curious about the reasons that you've stayed in this agency space for so long. What is it that keeps you coming back and keeps you doing you mentioned you had a short commute every day.
Yeah, my over 4 hours of commuting every single day from Long Island. Yeah, that's why I look so good. Yeah.
Hey, I wouldn't have guessed, more than 3 minutes of commute.
Yeah, I mean, I'm 19 years old. I only look 50.
He's amazing.
Yeah. I think, again, and advertising has its ups and downs. Every now and then you get you get bad news, a client moves away, you have a crappy assignment, all that stuff happens. But, every now and then you get the opportunity to fundamentally change a company through marketing, So, Mercedes-Benz, can point to their advertising is the reason that they have the status they have across the globe. We have a lot of clients that are in challenger brand positions where they're up against monster conglomerates, and we just have to outthink, big budgets. And there's those moments that challenge you strategically, they challenge you intellectually, they force you to find something that isn't necessarily right in front of your face. If we were just making nothing but print ads and digital ads and websites and just making pretty pictures move, I'm not sure I'd still be doing this because that's, a very transactional type thing. But when, the ask to us is, we got a problem, help us fix it, that's kind of cool. And in advertising, there's 1,000 ways you can go. That can be advertising. It can be product innovation. It can be some kind of, crazy event that undercuts a competitor. Right. So there's all kinds of stuff at our disposal. And as long as you're one of those people that wants to lean in and figure stuff out, advertising is something that keeps the blood pumping.
Yeah, the blood. That's great. The blood keeps pumping.
Can you imagine getting a 100% open rate on your next marketing message? Well, you can with extra large postcards that are impossible to ignore. Hippo Direct can help you find the perfect list of proven direct mail responders. We can even help lay out and design the postcard for you. Check us out at hippodirect.com.
How about specifically digital strategy? What made you hone in on as a passion point?
I think because at the time, and again, like I said, much of it may have been I was in the right place at the right time, but so many of the clients that we were working on had such a spending deficit versus their competition, and the promise of digital being, where you could find, not the 150 million, adults in the U.S. that you were going after, but the right 5 million through hyper-targeting was the way that a lot of our brands could compete. So it was one of those things where, again, if we had only had, brands that had $150 million in media spending, I'm not sure I would have found my way into digital as quickly as I did because we would have defaulted to traditional media. But when, right now one of our clients is Florida's Natural, an orange juice that's number 3 in the category, up against Tropicana and Simply Orange, who outspend us 10 or 15 to 1. We can't outshout them in broadcast. We have to outthink them in digital. So, one, I think I would have got there just because I like digital and all the promise of it and basically what it allows you to do. The complexity of it actually is attractive to me. But I do think that the types of clients we had required it to be a necessity because we had to do so much more with such fewer dollars.
So I'm going to give you a little scenario here.
Oh, I don't like this already.
You've passed the test. No. Let's say, we'll do this very small scale. If you had...
I can understand it?
We'll make this simple for you, Scott. No, but if somebody had $10 to spend and they want to get their message out there, what tools would you recommend to do that right now at the time of this recording?
Right now. Let's say it was for your business.
Sure. Yes.
Sure. You got $10.
This is consulting now. So.
Yeah, there you go. You got $10.
Oh, how'd you know our entire budget for the year?
Entire marketing budget for the whole year? Is that agency fee too? So now you have $9?
Yeah.
Honestly, I know this sounds like such a cop-out, but I'm probably putting you right on Instagram because I can get a CPM that's $4 or $5. I can get hyper-targeted to the people that I know have listened to it before and lookalikes.
Right.
And I can see what works on the back end and optimize. So, again, most of our clients just have more like $12 or $13, so I can really stretch it. But again, when you're dealing with really tight budgets or where to spend the first dollar,
right?
To me, it's all about where can the audience be found, how can I literally minimize waste, and what kind of data will come back to tell me if this is working or not. So, and you think about that through the lens of digital platforms, most of them provide it. But if you say I want to do a print ad, I'm going to run a print ad based on a ranker, and if it works, I hope, and then I'm going to really not have much data to tell you otherwise. So when really stretching those dollars, I'm making sure that there's accountability on the front end from targeting and the back end from delivery.
All right.
Pass?
Yeah, and it says you passed with flying colors. You've won the $10 reward.
There you go.
But Instagram, I know Instagram is kind of the sexy thing right now. It's getting bigger and bigger, and Facebook's obviously been great for them from a business and advertising side. What's your take on sort of the Instagram feed versus stories? Because it's fascinating how sort of people's attentions has shifted.
Yeah, I mean, every client wants us to focus on stories now.
Yeah.
Shocking, right?
Oh, yeah, a good story.
Nice. The way with which someone interacts with stories versus what you can get out of someone that's interacting with something in feed is a little bit more like top funnel, bottom funnel. So stories to us is a little bit more of an awareness equity builder. And in-feed stuff with kind of click out is when we're driving a little bit more e-com or we want a secondary behavior. So many times where we have clients that are using Instagram for full funnel, we'll do both, but the content won't be the same. So stories will be kind of the narrative or the brand POV, and what we put into feed will be more of a call to action or a transactional type relationship. So don't necessarily have a one-size-fits-all. It's a little bit through the lens of what the objective is of that post or posts.
Right. And stories is an example of which I don't know if it's 2 or 3 years old now for Instagram, but in the digital space, there's constantly new, shiny object, new toys that are.
Well, that was Snapchat's thing that Instagram hijacked. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, and I know they passed their users within a year, which is pretty insane.
Yep.
So when it's something sort of newer like that, and you start hearing clients are interested in trying it out. How do you know after you run a campaign when something's working or not?
What we do anytime we put something new into the mix is we go into beta phase with a really small pilot spend.
$10.
Yeah, $10. We take your entire marketing budget and we put it into stories. And it spends in 3 minutes. But, again, most of our clients, and even if they don't have this point of view, we put it forth to them, is we like to have 5% of their investment in this fluid testing budget. So whether that was, a couple of years ago, that was Snapchat for a lot of clients. Now you've got a lot of clients who will put it into TikTok or something like that.
Right.
Where,
that was an interesting one too.
Yeah. So we're trying to see what works, but in order for us to not be in a position where we're reacting to what competitors have probably done, we have to be willing to spend a modest amount of our media dollars and content production in places that might not work. But you might have the next Snapchat in front of you that your learning curve is faster than your competitors because you weren't afraid to test and fail.
Right.
I think the problem is that, with media budgets being strained and, a lot of pressure on advertising, there's such a fear of wasting $1. So, if you put something into a test and it doesn't work, you're like, oh my God, the accountability and the eyeballs on.
Right.
But if you have the right mix of agency and client that understand that in order for you to lead in digital means sometimes you got to fail a little bit responsibly, then you've got the right mix of being able to put some of these quote unquote shiny objects into there and see what potential they have. And if they pay back, you start to move money until it doesn't pay back.
Yeah, and before you know it, you're out of your $10.
You're out of your $10.
Done. Let's pivot here. I want to get to a big...
That's a serious word. Pivot is a serious word.
Thank you. Yeah, when I say it, I mean it in all caps.
I like it. Damn.
So let's pivot to a segment on inspiration and creativity. So creativity is a big thing that we focus on this podcast because it's such an important part of business, as you know, especially in the agency life. And people have so many different ways of getting inspired by different people, hobbies, and resources, to name our segment. So what do you do to stay creative?
For whatever reason, I've picked up this trait over the course of the last 3 to 5 years. And I apologize, it's going to sound so cheesy and make me sound like I'm 95 years old.
Well, you're 19, so that's
nice.
all right.
19 going on 68. I read a lot of presidential biographies.
Really?
I know that sounds odd, but everything back to the true founding fathers to clearly up to JFK and Reagan and that kind of stuff. The reason that I do it is not because I want to just be a scholar of presidential history, but literally
you are the president.
There you go. That's what it is. As soon as I became president, I just figured I'm one of 45 now. So everything that crosses those dudes' desks and hopefully the guys and gals' desks one day.
Yeah.
Doesn't get there unless it's a big problem.
Right.
Nothing gets to a president's desk that isn't a massive issue. If it was not a massive issue, it was solved before it got there. Wow. And it's amazing to kind of hear the tensions and the way they thought through the process and solve for things. So to me, because so many, and again, I know the stretch here is significant, but because we talked about the fact that the cool part about advertising is when a client just kind of throws a problem at you and says, what do you do?
Right.
9 times out of 10, I'm not coming up with the actual solution.
Right.
I'm just trying to get the resources in line to help get there. And when I read these types of books and I see how they pulled in adversaries and allies and thought through problems and that kind of stuff, it actually is quite inspiring to see how they work through issues, not necessarily solving themselves, but creating a team that does.
Right.
And that's why, again, it's not about necessarily creativity and inspiration in that space, but it's creativity in terms of actually how to get to the core of an issue and come with a non-traditional solution. Mm-hmm. That's why I do that kind of on my 5 minutes of downtime a week.
Well, it's amazing you could read a whole book in 5 minutes, but
nice. Well played,
that is a cool. Thank you. That is a cool approach to it because that's a really good point. There's no little problems that get to the president's desk.
Florida's natural has a problem, or the Cold War, pretty much the same thing.
Yeah.
That's how I think about stuff. Yeah.
Are there any? I'm sure you've read a lot of them. Are there any specific books that you want to recommend or?
Again, I think a lot of people know this one, but Lincoln's Lessons on Leadership. It's a lot of people read.
Yeah. That was actually a previous guest, my advertising professor in Kelly in Bestinelli. She mentioned that one. So Lincoln kind of came to my mind when you first mentioned that one.
There's actually another book that was written by, forgive me if I say this right, I think they're ex-Navy SEALs, but Extreme Ownership.
That sounds familiar.
It's a really fascinating and humbling book where you just, really taking complete ownership for everything, even things that are not in your control, how it can motivate an organization. That has been a kind of a foundation of some of the principles I've tried to put in place for myself. Yeah. Again, probably fail at most of them every day. But
that was actually humble.
That was the humble thing. Don't worry, I'll offset it with something. Really, boom. Yeah, boom. But that's another good one if you want to take a peek at that.
Cool. And then how about hobbies? What do you do besides reading? What do you do outside of work that keeps your mind fresh?
Run really slowly.
Really?
Really slowly.
Intentionally or unintentionally?
No. Like towards food trucks. No. It's so like a couple of years ago, I just started running like 5Ks and 10Ks and got up to a half marathon, even though I'm like an ex-football player who's well over 200 pounds. So I'm that guy who's like, with the stragglers and like the speed walkers in the back.
Yeah.
But I give it a go. You want to talk about a humbling experience?
Yeah.
Yeah. You come from an agency where, you think you've done some decent stuff, like, you've made it to president, and then you go run like a half marathon and you get beat by an 82-year-old woman. And you're like, you come back in a Monday recalibrated with your perspective on stuff.
In football, what position you play in football?
I was a defensive lineman in college.
Okay. Well, that explains the not too fast running.
Yeah, no, we moved about 5 feet and then fell on top of people. So to ask me to run long distances is just not nice.
You've got some kids at home.
I do.
What sort of activities are they into?
I have 2 daughters, Ava and Haley. Ava is 10, Haley's 5. We've got dance for both of them. Haley's in gymnastics. Ava is field hockey. One of them drama. I don't know how my wife does it.
Wow.
It keeps her busy for every hour of the day during the week.
Yeah.
I'm responsible for like 1 or 2 things on the weekend, and I'm stressed out. So I'm not even sure how she does it, but they keep us busy.
Well, good thing you run at snail's pace to de-stress a little bit.
There you go.
But the reason I asked that in the first place is because when Brendan was on the podcast, one of his big things for creativity was thinking like a child. So it's always interesting.
You mean the guy you had on is
kids
2, and I'm now in the 20s? That guy, the second one.
Oh well, may I remind you, you're both in the first 26. So
that's cool. But 26 said no one ever.
We'll give you a trophy after that says
number 26.
Number 26.
Sweet.
How about people? So I'll get a little more specific for your case. Who can you point to in the digital marketing space that was inspiring for you and sort of helped encourage you to get into this space?
That's a great question.
Thank you.
Wow.
It might be marketing space in general or just business.
I got to be honest with you. I am not. It's going to be in trouble. This is why I was 26. I really am usually not a proponent or a big fan of like the talking heads in the space. The folks that are really not putting digital into the marketplace, but they're speaking at a 30,000-foot academic level at these conferences. And again, I respect the things that they're doing, and obviously they're well versed in a lot of the lingo. But I really, really don't get a lot of inspiration from those types of folks. I really enjoy talking to folks on the ground that know so much about the logistics. And I know that it's probably counter to a lot of managerial principles of like get out of the weeds. But I think in the world of digital, the creativity and the execution are so married with the technology and the way that you actually bring digital to life that unless you understand some of the nuances, I think you're just faking it. So I actually get a lot of inspiration and motivation and continue to learn by working very directly with a lot of the folks on my team and a lot of the junior folks that you would think don't necessarily, shape the digital strategy. I'm not expecting them to do that, but the nuances of how they're thinking about the platforms, understanding how they're shifting behaviors completely changes the way I think about things versus just this big grandiose statement at a seminar where I'm like, well, that sounds nice, but when's the last time you put something into practice? So I try to be with the troops on the ground as often as possible, which was another lesson from Lincoln, FYI.
Really?
Leadership by wandering. Make sure you talk to the troops. But again, that's how I think you really stay attuned and your strategies have a finer point on them.
And when you say talking to folks on the ground, do you mean you lay it down and you guys have a conversation, or you mean?
Yeah, I mean we literally lay on the ground.
You're planking.
This is a nap time. By the way,
which is important for every agency.
Does it look like I've ever done a plank? By the way,
I think you're pretty athletic.
Sure, let's go with that. It's a podcast, so yes.
Planking. I think we're dating ourselves now with planking. It's funny how
planking isn't even a thing now.
Right. I don't know. I haven't laid down forever. But and then I want to shout out your Tumblr blog because we're connected on Lincoln. Lincoln. You got me saying Lincoln.
Yeah, Lincoln.
Yeah, we're connected based on Lincoln.
Yes.
No, we're connected on LinkedIn, and you share, what is it, once a week?
That's what I try to do.
Once a week, you post really, really cool, insightful Tumblr blog posts that I think you're sharing on LinkedIn now. And I know that, ever since we were connected on LinkedIn, I noticed them, and I really enjoy them. So I don't know how much feedback you get on them, but keep doing them. They're very you have some really cool lessons, especially from leadership and sort of just in the business space. But how'd you start doing that in the first place? Like, what made you?
Yeah, it's a good question. You know, I get that a lot, and I'm always I get a little, I guess uncomfortable is even the word when people like give me a shout out about that or even comment on it. Just because.
I'm sorry for making.
No, that's not what I meant. Yeah, you jerk. No, you know, because it actually started with a little bit almost of a venting platform for me, where you know, if I was having some kind of an issue at work, I'd try to distill it down to actually have a takeaway for me. And for many months, I was actually just writing it and leaving it on Tumblr, just so that it was a little bit of a repository for, you know, my own thoughts. And then, you know, over time, some folks stumbled upon it and said, you know what, it's, you know, and actually I could see application for this and whatnot. So it's funny how it just became a way for me to take something good out of a lot of the challenges that you have in corporate America day to day. Yeah. And, you know, it's actually become, because I travel a ton, I'm not around the office a lot.
Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, I know. I tried my best not to be here, but you followed me.
I have a lot of pull there.
There you go. Yeah, but honestly, you know, it's actually an opportunity for me to have a connection with the folks at the agency on a more frequent basis. You know, because I do think that these little nuances are important to personal growth. So if I can't sit down and talk to one of a couple hundred people on a frequent basis, hopefully there's a few tidbits every now and then that I could share with them that might help or might not. But either way, it's a way of staying connected.
It definitely is. And for the listeners here, I want to make sure that they know where to access it. It's Gelber, Gelbr, right?
Yeah.
Correct? Perfect.
Gelber.tumblr.
Gelber.tumblr.
See, because I'm not clever. I took the E out of Gelber because they took the E out of Tumblr.
Oh, my God. Well,
see, like, why? Like, we don't need anyone but me. I'm creative genius and stuff like that.
Exactly. Well, off the record, I'm going to start a brand stutter that just ends in TR instead of TER.
I feel like that's half my idea.
You can get
That's like half my idea.
You can get royalties for that. I'll give you 49%. Let's move to a fan favorite segment of the podcast. This is the Wild Business Shout Out of the Week.
The Wild Business Shout Out of the Week!
So, Wild Business Shout Out of the Week. This is where you'll mention a recent marketing or advertising campaign that caught your eye, and we talk about it for a little bit. So, what do you want to highlight on this edition?
Sure. And I usually would never go to a big brand, a big budget, and I'd find some like, you know, niche kick-ass thing that was done via digital. But I got to tell you what Walmart did in the Golden Globes with their curbside delivery, bringing back all the famous cars from you know, cinematic history. That to me was just right in the sweet spot of nostalgia and function, and I just couldn't imagine creating a better spot for that type of service. It must have cost $10 million with the licensing fees. I can't imagine. But, you know, it's now been a week or so. We're still talking about it at the agency. I know what it's for. It wasn't just a cool spot that I can't remember who did it or why they did it. Right. It cut across generations. My parents are talking about it. I'm talking about it. Even my kids know some of the stuff that was
People are podcasting about it.
Yeah, it was well done top to bottom. I'm sure they spent more than other brands have their whole media budget just to produce that.
Yeah,
but
well, if they spent $11.
There you go. There you go.
But for anybody that hasn't seen it, can you just give a brief synopsis of what it was?
Yeah, I mean, it's really... It's trying to promote their curbside pickup, right? And, you know, and augment to their delivery. And what they had is, I think the line was, no matter what you drive, you can basically get your groceries or items picked up right in front of the Walmart. But they had all of famous vehicles show up to get their delivery. So everything from the DeLorean from Back to the Future, Scooby-Doo, they had Jurassic Park vehicles. Some stuff I didn't even know what it was, but I just assumed it was
They had the Dumb and Dumber.
The Dumb and Dumber, the Shaggy Dog. I mean, it was just everything that showed up, you just had a smile on your face. But again, I think like that's when you know you have a genius idea. When someone leaves a spot or an execution or anything you're watching, you go, I just really enjoyed that. That created an emotional connection, and I know exactly why they did that and the benefit it has for me. That's like the holy grail of advertising. So kudos to the team and the shop that did that, because that was about as good a spot I've seen in the last 10 or 15 years.
Wow. High praise from the 19-year-old president there.
There you go. 19 years, that's the best spot I've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't remember the early years, but I completely agree. I mean, I think they really hit on nostalgia, which is obviously very powerful emotional connector there. And they combined automobiles from so many different movies, but they really kept the distinct vibe from that each, you know, it's like the I remember the Dumb and Dumber dog was sort of driving all over the place, crazy. They came in whatever style they were in the movies, but it also, I think, it was straight into the point about the curbside pickup, and it showed it in sort of a really fun way. And it also, they achieved this very well. It just gave like a really positive view of that service and of Walmart in general. It had such a fun, positive vibe about it, which I think is hard to make yourself fun consistently, especially when you're something that has been around for so long.
Yeah, and it's going to be one of the issues that, again, not to go on a tangent about Walmart, but they're going to have to figure that. Again, Target's been the big box that has like the more favorable perception by the brands they associate with. So, they're going to have to, and again, no one's crying poverty, the ownership of Walmart.
Right.
But, they're going to have to create a little bit more of a personality that isn't just everyday low prices, because Target has a point of view and they're obviously a core competitor. So I think messaging like this shows probably that they recognize they need to have a personality, not just a functional position for consumers. So I'll be anxious to see what they follow that up with, because the bar is pretty high, at least for me, and after that.
Yeah, and it's cool that such a traditional big box retailer had such a sexy spot at the Golden Globe.
Yeah, there you go. That's all we do. That's all we do.
Let's have a sexy pivot here to the segment called The Unusual. So real quick, I want to talk about some things that aren't talked about too often.
No, I really don't like this.
First question here. What's your biggest pet peeve? What comes to mind?
People that this is going to sound bad. People that will just accept mediocrity. I can't stand people phoning stuff in.
You know what? That answer wasn't good enough for me.
What?
No, I'm just kidding.
It doesn't get much more pet peevy than that.
I try to have as many play on words as possible. But I agree. Well, you're never gonna progress if that's the way it is.
Listen, particularly at work, it's not about Merkley, it's about everything. If you showed up, you're already committed to what it is. Give 100%. I hate people that show up and go through the motions. Just if you're there, you're gonna anything worth doing is worth doing well. I've heard that 1,000 times from somebody. I just don't know who it is.
So that's probably Lincoln.
Probably said it slightly more eloquent than that.
Probably, yeah, with the hat. But how about quirks? Anything that you find yourself doing that you've sort of always done, but maybe your wife or kids have called you out?
I have to lay out my clothes perfectly ironed every night.
Perfectly ironed?
In the exact same spot every single night. I have a chair in my bedroom.
A lot of people could use that.
But it is exactly the same layout. I also have to sit in the exact same train seat on the Long Island Railroad every single morning.
Really?
Yeah, and I have to get there in time that no one gets in that seat, because if they do, I'm literally out of sorts the whole day.
Can you describe it? What seat it is? Like what the Scott Gelber seat is?
It's the first one after the 6-seater on the 639 Adirondack.
All right, there you go. They'll probably
you sit in that seat. It'll be the last thing you ever do.
Hey, listen, you. All right, cool. I'll have to try that train out later.
I'll just go home.
No, I won't even. I
will literally call in sick.
Well, probably after this podcast, they'll have a gold plate there with your name on it.
20 years, come on, give me something.
And we'll say episode number 26.
Thank you for that.
Last one here. Do you have any weird talents? Anything that has basically no benefit, but you can do it?
Oh, I had something that has the opposite effect of a benefit. I can eat like no one else.
Oh,
I mean,
all right, eat off after this.
I'm serious. In college, a couple competitive, less formal, but a couple competitive eating situations. I'm not totally proud of some of my stats, but I can eat, man. I can seriously eat.
It makes sense with the D-lineman background.
D-lineman, yeah. I mean, we're talking. What was the one I'm the most proud of? It was a 8-minute taco eating competition.
Oh my god!
Just take a guess. What do you think?
Don't.
Is
it double digits? Is it double digits?
It's 24.
24
tacos, 8 minutes.
Oh, I should have made you episode 24.
Yeah. Oh, thanks again for that.
All right.
If I had only eaten,
we're gonna beat that. We're gonna beat that to the ground. 24 in 8 minutes.
In 8 minutes.
Wow. So that's 3 minutes.
He's trying to do math.
Three a minute.
He's trying to do math. It's not working out.
Let me put the calculator away.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
A couple years to live.
Have you recovered from those 24?
No, I have not.
Okay. Let's go to. So we only got a little bit of time left. Yeah. So let's wrap up with some rapid fire Q&A. Okay. You ready for it?
Nope.
That's touche. That's pretty good. All right, let's get wild. We're gonna do it anyway. What is your favorite football memory?
High school beating Brentwood when we were expected to lose by 30. Boom, that's right. I did
There we
it.
go. All right. Congrats on the win.
Yeah, in the mid-90s. I'm not hanging on to my glory days.
No,
Al Bundy right here.
He's wearing his leather jacket, by the way. But what is, you mentioned food. What is your favorite food of all time?
Oh, Sicilian pizza. I could eat Sicilian pizza every day for the rest of my life.
Now I'm starving. Okay, how about, what is your favorite type of music?
I have, I'm like default Long Island guy has to say Billy Joel.
Yeah.
I have no choice but to say Billy Joel.
And that's like as a genre, like just Billy Joel.
Billy Joel. I don't
everything.
even know what genre it is. He's a genre
He's
unto
Billy
himself.
Joel.
Yeah.
Okay, how about continuing the food trend here? What is your favorite restaurant in NYC?
It's got to be Keen's Chop House. Just have you
Yeah.
been?
I have not, but for my birthday, my parents just gave me a gift card to a few different steak places. So I've been craving steak
between the Seafood Tower and their prime rib.
Oh, a tower.
That'll send you into a tailspin you'll never recover from.
Oh my God! What do you get there? What's your
The prime rib after the giant seafood. I mean, that's literally the only thing I will get. With their like horseradish sauce on the prime rib.
I don't blame you.
It's a problem.
All right, cool. I'll head there right after this. All right, and this is a very unique question. And shout out my buddy Cam from back home, Solon, Ohio, as we're doing sort of would you rather questions, and this was the most unique. This is the most unique one I've ever heard. So I'll throw it on you. Would you rather have noodles instead of fingers?
This is already so stupid.
Right. And the second one, it's like a non sequitur. The second part has nothing to do with it. Would you rather have noodles instead of fingers or only be able to eat peanut butter for the rest of your life? Like you have to eat peanut butter every meal.
Is it exclusively peanut butter?
Yes,
Oh,
exclusively.
forget it. Give me noodle fingers. Hell
Noodle
no.
fingers. There you
Hell
go.
no. No fingers.
Noodle fingers for Scott.
That is not even, that wasn't even in the same zip code.
Right. Okay. Yeah, a little sticky situation there, but it's always
that was a dad joke.
Thanks.
Nice.
I don't have kids yet, but I am well prepared for the dad joke life. All right, so we'll wrap up here. Thank you, Scott. This has been fantastic. It's been a ton of fun catching up and you sharing some of your genius, which you're too humble to admit. But this has been really, really cool. And thanks for hosting us at the amazing Merkley+Partners office here in New York City. Before we sign off here, what is the best place for people to connect with you on social media or anywhere to reach you?
Yeah, I mean, so on Twitter, it's Gelber1, LinkedIn, and as you mentioned earlier, try to post on Tumblr as often as possible. Those would probably be the three best, and I try to put out content that people like. And please, if you like it, let me know. I'll do more of it. If you think I should do something else, let me know. I'll change it. Because I'm really doing it to try to help some folks that I work with on this side. So that's where I'm at. Let me know what you think.
Awesome. Yeah, and I'll reemphasize my point from earlier. You should definitely keep doing it because you got a lot of really cool stuff, and it kind of changes a little bit every week what you focus on, but there's a lot of great lessons there. So make sure to check out Gelber.Tumblr. Nice. I said it correctly.
Yeah. And please mind the grammar. I have an analytical background, not an English one. So.
Right. Okay, so last thing here. The stage is yours. Any final thoughts? Just anything you want to send us off.
No, I mean, I think that, and again, not to pander to my audience, but podcasts like this, the things that you're doing are exactly what's going to help the next wave of innovation and marketing. I think to be honest with you, the old school way of advertising and marketing communications, where it was, 5 shops and a couple people that really were shaping everything, that's not what it's going to be for the near future. So the more you can create more channels for more people to share their thoughts, and people do crowdsourcing on how to market and how to think strategically, I think that's going to help us. So, stuff like this, please keep doing it. I encourage the people that are listening to this to make their own content, because the more that's out there, the better we're all going to be.
Big thanks, Scotty Tuhati.
Thanks, pal. There it is. Thanks for having us.
Get out there and create some content. Thank you so much, Scott, the fastest commuter in wild business growth history. And big thanks to the team at Merkley for letting me into their office with open arms. Thank you, wild listeners, for tuning in to another episode. You know what to do. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast if you're not already, and give us a review, 5-star review, written review if you can, on Apple Podcasts or any of your favorite audio platforms.
To get the most out of this podcast experience, make sure you're following us on all your favorite social media platforms at Hippo Direct. You can also follow me at Max Brandstetter. We post behind-the-scenes content all the time, as well as marketing tips, business tips, and more to help you grow your brand. If you enjoyed hearing about the Walmart Golden Globes ad or any of the other creative marketing campaigns we talk about on this podcast, sign up for the Hippo Digest. It's your weekly recap of creative marketing, and you can sign up at hippodirect.com/newsletter. That's all for this episode. Tune in next time. Let your business run wild.
Bring on the bongos!